be more than human. Hello, and welcome back to the channel, all my fellow more than humans. My name is Joseph Carroll. I write under the pen name J.R. Carroll. And today we're going to have a kind of a fun little discussion here, as you may have seen in the thumbnail or the title. This is about books that you've went through at least 2 books and then DNF'd. And why? Why would you have subjected yourself to at least 2 books and then called it quits? Now, I kind of put this out here on my community post and got some answers there. And also, if you want to interact with me or some other cool booktubers, I'm actually over on the Page Chewing, if I can even talk today, website, and that is Steve from Steve Talks Books website and forum, and there's a lot of us that hang out over there and just shoot the breeze. And I asked over there, and I got a ton of responses about this. Now, most of the time, you'll go through book 1 and you'll just be like, sometimes people just don't DNF and they go through book 1 and they're like, I'm done. That's, the book's just not for me. The author's just not for me. But I was more interested in book series that you've made it into. You've at least given it 2 or more books. And really, this question is, to me, is if you've watched my channel for any length of time, me and Malzahn have this thing going on where I've made it through three books and into the 4th book, and I just kind of put it down and just haven't wanted to come back to it. And and I was like, I have my own reasons and whatnot, but I wanted to know your guys' reasons if you've made it into different book series and what the book series are. Some of these book series I was actually kind of like, wow, they're really popular. I don't hear too many bad things about them. So that was interesting. But before we jump into that, make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you throw some comments down here. What are some books that you have only made it through 2 or more in the series and decided to quit, and why? And if you want to support the channel and support my writing, you can check out my book and my Patreon, which is a little bit different than most people's, in the description below. So let's jump. One of the first ones I seen was from Patrick Ryan, who's an awesome booktuber. He said The Poppy War, and his initial thing was Ren was way too annoying.
She annoyed me, so I killed her and buried her in the yard.
And that's not the first time I've heard that. And then he went on to kind of elaborate. He's like, there are some people who love it, but those of us who don't pretty much all agree Ren is intolerable. So yeah, definitely. A specific or a main character, maybe you kind of like, and I've had books like that, like with All Systems Red, the Murderbot. I didn't really like Murderbot's character in the beginning, but I liked the kernel of the world around it and everything. And maybe that's how some people go. They're like, all right, I like the world building and I like some of the other characters, but I guess evidently he succumbed to the ability to not be able to tolerate Ren. Yeah, and not the first person I've heard that has had negative things to say, about Ren. And then one of my other buddies, Chaz from Bookish Chaz, says The Wheel of Time, just not interested in the story enough to keep going.
Boring, right? So boring. I want to kill myself.
And that's a big one, and that might be the biggest part for me when it comes to Malazan. I mean, there's twofold. Like, actually, some of the story was kind of cool, but yeah, I just wasn't invested in the characters for me. I know some people cried at book 3, but I just never really connected with the characters and the overall story, because there wasn't a continuous, cohesive, story over thousands of pages. Um, for me, that's probably where that hit. But yeah, I've heard that from the Wheel of Time as well. We'll pop over here. And like I said, we had tons of people over at the forum, and one person said made it through 3 books of Discworld, didn't like the writing, didn't get the humor.
Do you consider yourself humorous?
I've only went through 1 book with Discworld, and that was Going Postal, and that's one of the later books. Alan from the Library of Alexandria told me I shouldn't start at The Color of Magic, and he goes, Going Postal would be a good one to start from. And I did feel a little underwhelmed. I think I was expecting, with all the hype surrounding it, that that would be just a monumental book and reading experience, and I just felt it was okay. And I thought, that being the later books, he would have been dialed in perfectly. And so I don't know. You tell me if you've read Going Postal and some of the other books. Is like, where is Going Postal rated? If that's in the top, 25% of books, then maybe Discworld isn't for me. And the British humor, it just wasn't, And then this one, hurts my soul. I've seen The Dark Tower, 2 books, just turned into a fever dream, and not in a good way. I can 100% understand people being like, man, I do not get this Dark Tower thing, because, The Dark Tower is every genre that you could possibly imagine. Western fantasy, portal, dark, grimdark, fairy tale, just everything you can imagine, dystopian, epic fantasy. It has it all. But it can be disorienting for some people, for sure. We got people saying Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I have never, I've heard of, never really got into it. Farseer trilogy, now that's a weird one, because most people, it seems like it's a unanimous love, but they said they made it through book 2, massive hype, couldn't match book 1, was decent but not great, and frustrating. Prince is obviously the baddie. That's one I do want to get to, so I was like, oh no. And then Murderbot's on here. I've already told you my thoughts on Murderbot, and The Faithful and the Fallen. That's another one that people seem to really, really enjoy, mostly. And this person, super hyped, but everything was predictable, paint by numbers, fantasy, all the tropes. I've been through the first 2 books of the newest series by him. And waiting, and more Discworld on here. What else do we got? We have another one with the Farseer trilogy, books of Dust. Just wasn't buying into what they were selling. A lot of people. We have one person here who said The Witcher, Lady of the Lake wasn't for him, and that's the last book of the series. Now that one gets me. I'm like, I would just power through. If I'm on the last book, I am gonna go power through this. A Song of Ice and Fire, A Feast of Crows was the beginning of the downfall. I'm actually in it. That's my next book, is book 2 in A Song of Ice and Fire. So don't tell me that it gets bad. I hear most people say it's like one of the greatest of all time. But maybe that's another thing too. Maybe sometimes you go into a book series and it's been hyped up so much that you're expecting it to be the greatest thing you've ever read, and then you just it just becomes okay. And okay might have been good enough for you to keep going, but with so much hype backing it, maybe it's just not where, maybe you just feel so disappointed you're like, I'm done after book 2. Yeah, my buddy Steve over at Steve, he cut out on book Tower. I got to book 5, and I was just like, man. But he also said the First Law standalones right before Age of Madness. Yeah, I've done the First Law trilogy, and I've heard his standalones are hit or miss. But yeah, before the end of the year, I'm definitely gonna go back into First Law. I'm not sure where, but yeah, there's just so many. I'll probably make another video kind of like this, just because there's so many people talking about this. So you let me know, what's a book that you've at least went through book 2 and then you quit, and why did you quit? What was the reason that you quit? Was it the book itself, or was it just the way you were, was it you, not them? Let me know. But remember, be more than human.